Poltergeist, German for noisy ghost or noisy spirit, is a type of ghost or spirit that is responsible for physical disturbances, such as loud noises and objects being moved or destroyed. Today, we are going to explore two such poltergeists from British history. The first being the first ever officially recorded poltergeist, the Drummer of Tedworth, a poltergeist manifestation that disturbed Magistrate John Mompesson's household at Tedworth, Wiltshire, England, from 1661 to 1663. And the second being the Battersea Poltergeist, a more modern recording, which takes place in an ordinary house on a quiet street in Battersea, South London. The Drummer of Tedworth, the first ever officially recorded poltergeist activity in England and the world. In 1661, John Mompesson, a landowner and magistrate, was visiting Wiltshire in Wiltshire when he came across a local vagrant called William Drury. Drury had been making a nuisance of himself in the town, playing his drum relentlessly while begging for money, much to the annoyance of local townsfolk. Mompesson confronted the drummer and found him to be in possession of counterfeit documents permitting him to busk for money. Mompesson brought a case against the drummer and the local police confiscated the drum. Mompesson returned to home in Tedworth without another thought for the drummer or his unwelcome rhythms. However, the offending drum arrived at the magistrate's house a few days later, forwarded by the police, and not long after the drum arrived, Mompesson's house was plagued by inexplicable drumming, thumping noises, strange lights, scratching and unpleasant smells. One night, exasperated by the strange noises, Mompesson chased the sounds through the house with his pistol drawn, but to no avail. After a month had passed, the drumming increased in its ferocity, moving inside the house and terrorizing the room where the instrument was placed. This was unnerving enough for the family, but their fear would increase as the sounds began to focus on the children's bedroom. Mompesson wrote in his diary,
"It would make chairs, tables and beds move up and down the rooms, and often throw them down the stairs. It sometimes sounded like a metal chain was being dragged along the hallway in the rooms. One night, I heard a scratching in the children's room. It seemed to be coming from behind the children's bed. The scratching sounded like it was from a hand with long nails. I asked the children in the bed to show me their hands to make sure they were not playing tricks, but the sound continued, even when their hands were in view. My children told me that they would feel strong hands grip them and throw them from the bed during the night, as well as seeing strange lights in the dark and experiencing foul smells like sulphur. We tried on several occasions to get a priest to bless the house, but this seemed to just anger it and the drumming noise and bangs would only get louder. A local blacksmith, convinced it was a hoax, stayed the night, but was harassed by a pair of pincers continually snapping at his face all night. Sleep-deprived neighbours would complain about the banging and drumming keeping them up at night, and others would flock to the estate grounds to witness the sound for themselves. We sometimes knew when it was present because the candles would not burn in the room where it was. One of the servants reported seeing an apparition at the foot of his bed. He couldn't make out the exact shape, but it had two glaring red eyes that stared at him for quite a while before vanishing.
Loud, animalistic scratching emanated from beneath the children's beds. Their bed frames were beaten, the children shaken and lifted from their beds. Mompesson's plight quickly gained notoriety, and many people came to visit the house and witness these strange occurrences for themselves. For most of this period, however, the drummer had been locked up in jail and could not have been responsible for the strange occurrences, so it was assumed that he must have used witchcraft to summon a mischievous spirit or poltergeist to haunt the landowner's home. In 1662, William Drury, the drummer, was arrested for theft and sent to prison. While in prison, he confessed to being the cause of Mompesson's paranormal troubles. Drury stood trial again, with Mompesson and 3 other men testifying against him in court, and under the Witchcraft Act of 1604, a jury found him guilty. For Drury's previous crimes of theft, and now witchcraft, he was sent to the American colonies, never to be seen again. There were no records of further disturbances after this date. Was there really witchcraft involved? Or was William Drury, the drummer, just a poor beggar in the wrong place at the wrong time? In 1956, number 63 Wycliffe Road was home to the Hitchings family. The father, Wally, was in his 40s, a tall, gaunt London Underground driver. His wife Kitty was a former office clerk, now in a wheelchair due to chronic arthritis. But it was their 15-year-old daughter, Shirley, who was the centre of the paranormal events. Shirley was about to start art school and was working part-time as a seamstress. Also living at the address was Shirley's grandmother, Ethel, a fiery character known locally as Old Mother Hitchings. One night, the family were awoken by deafening bangs reverberating through the house, shaking the walls and floor. The sound was so loud, the neighbours came round to complain, imagining the father was hammering or tearing up floorboards in the middle of the night. Soon the banging became a daily occurrence, and even started to take place in broad daylight. The Hitchings, sleep deprived and terrified, called out the police and various surveyors, but no one was able to get to the bottom of where the noises came from. Along with the intense banging, a scratching sound, appearing to be from inside the furniture, began to develop too. Even the bed headboard would start making a scratching sound as the residents tried to sleep. As time went on, the unusual activities inside the house became more extreme. Soon, objects began moving. Speaking about the incident on BBC Radio into the events at Wycliffe Road, Evelyn Hollow, a Scottish writer and parapsychologist who witnessed the events, said, "We're talking about a clock floating in the air. We're talking about pots and pans being thrown from a room that nobody was in." Multiple witnesses claim to have seen bed sheets flying off beds, slippers walking around of their own accord, and chairs moving. As time went on, these events became increasingly violent. Rooms were described as being trashed, and the house was like a war zone. However, this is where the case became unusual, even for the poltergeist haunting. Spontaneous fires would break out, disembodied voices were heard, and writing appeared on the wall and even on paper around the house. Over time, the family even began to find ways to communicate with the poltergeist, who they named Donald, and over the years the family tried to establish who he may be. The experience was so life-defining that Shirley, now 80 years old, wrote a book about her experiences called The Poltergeist Prince of London. The house at which the haunting took place no longer exists today. It was demolished in the late 1960s, and no house or structure has been built over the area since.